zero patience from the get-go. I had to really grow that practice from the ground up. I had negotiated a 6-month rent-free period so that we could build. And I was thinking, it'll take 3 months to build. I've got 3 months rent-free. We're just building ourselves up, getting income in, sorting out staff wages. I know that things don't go perfectly to plan. So even if it's 4 or 5 months, I've got a 6-month margin. So surely this is going to be straightforward. But the build is only finished in September. And we took 6 months to actually get to a usable space. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was really rewarding seeing it all come together when the first patient started to step in and we were operating. Problems are going to come, but you just have to find a way to make it work. There's no turning back. The bank is expecting their repayments, whether you build or not. They're expecting their repayment. In 6 months, I didn't take any income from the business. And even now, I take about £1,000 a month from the business. I was earning a lot more as a self-employed dentist working for somebody else. Even though I'm generating much more as a dentist in my own practice, I actually take home very little. And then I had children, and then I realized I wasn't anywhere near good enough with my time management.
First of all, really nice to meet you in person. And it would be great if you can share a bit more about your background, like how you're leading up to setting up your own practice, but mostly before that.
Yes, so my name is Dr. Arnold Gangaidzo, Arnold, Arnie, depending on who you are. But yeah, I'm living in Preston right now, the sunny area of Preston. It's rarely sunny. And a dentist, clinic owner, Lancashire Smiles. We're a practice that's based in a place called Kirkham. Many people won't know where Kirkham is in the country, but it's between Preston and Blackpool. So right close to the coast, 15-minute drive from the coast. So we're in the northwest in Lancashire in Kirkham. And I wasn't born in England. I was born in Zimbabwe. So that's next to South Africa, Southern Africa. And when I was 7 years old, my parents decided to move the whole family to England. So the country wasn't doing too well in Zimbabwe. Opportunities weren't really available like that for, families wanting their children to have better in life. So we moved to England, 1999, August. I remember stepping off the plane, freezing. It was just me and my older brother. I got 4 brothers, but that plane journey was me and my oldest brother. And it was just acclimatization, this new culture, this new way of life. And growing up in England now, it was deciding what did I want for my future. So, my background, you don't really get to know about many careers. Dentistry definitely was not a career that I knew about. I'd never seen a dentist in Zimbabwe. So at the time, healthcare, my parents are in healthcare. I thought I want to be in healthcare as well. I want to help people that way. So the only real option that was like, you're aiming high sort of career was to be a medical doctor. So, GCSEs, A-levels did really well. And I was just gearing myself towards becoming a medical doctor. It came to applying through UCAS, my work experience, and I only got 1 interview for a medical school. The other 3 medical schools rejected me before interview. And so it was Cambridge that invited me for an interview. So went to Cambridge for the interview. My oldest brother, again, he took me, drove me there. And so it was good. I remember some of the questions from that interview. Sadly, I didn't, depending on how you look at it, I didn't get in. So I'm in this position where I've been gearing towards medical school. My friends know that I want to go to medical school. My family know that I want to go to medical school, but I don't actually have a university place. So there's that pressure that you can't just be doing nothing if you're not going to medical school. So I was on Google. How else can I get into medical school? And this course called medical physiology, so biological science in the University of Leicester came up. And they said, if you do really well in year 1, we will transfer you over to medical school in Leicester. So that was the new plan. Do this degree course for 1 year, then transfer into medicine. But it was a blessing in disguise because in that year, I got to know a little bit more about myself. And yes, I wanted to be in healthcare, but I wanted to own a business as well and have something that I can build and pass on to future generations. So that's where I wanted to now have something where there's healthcare, but I can start a business as well. It's difficult to do that as a medical doctor. And really knowing myself, becoming a medical doctor would be too restrictive for the ideas that I have and what I want to do in life. So dentistry came up and I started to gear myself towards dentistry. So that's a brief summary of how I came to choosing dentistry. I got accepted to the University of Lancashire, which is in Preston. It's a 4-year degree instead of 5 years because I had a science degree already. And that's what took me to the Northwest, to Preston, to Lancashire. And I loved it in the area so much I decided to stay. And then did my foundation year as a dentist in the area, in the region. And I always knew from that time I decided to go into dentistry that I want to start a business. So everything that I was learning and gearing myself towards, it was to get to this place of owning a dental practice. So I wasn't just interested in the clinical knowledge and becoming competent. I was also thinking about what do successful practices do, or what do successful businesses do? So I was learning that business side alongside the clinical side at university as well. And that's what helped me to launch Lancashire Smiles dental practice successfully in 2024 in September.
I've got 2 follow-up questions. Interesting, very interesting. You practically left where your family are currently based. I believe it was London or Southeast England.
So Aylesbury, where
Aylesbury.
I landed when I first came to the country. Then with Dad's work, we went to Derby in the East Midlands, Barbados. So that's where most of my family actually is, Derby. I then went to university in Leicester, and then I went to university for dentistry in Preston.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. You mentioned something about the medical school. Again, I didn't come from healthcare or medical school background, so I have very little knowledge, even though I have some friends who work as doctors. But you mentioned something that dentistry is quite unique, that is different from other medical school or areas where it's easier, or it's a better route in terms of setting up your own business. Is it because of the demand in terms of its own sort of vertical and niche that's being needed in terms of demand in the market?
Yeah. So I think what you have to do is you have to look at the landscape of what's the employment status of clinicians within dentistry. And in dentistry, most clinicians are self-employed. You only really get employed dentists when they're working in a hospital. If you look at medicine, where are most medical doctors employed? Within hospitals. They mainly live within hospitals, and it doesn't lend itself to starting a business. So I think the employment structure of the professions helps with that. And with dentistry, you the investment, the funding, you build the practice, and you start inviting patients in. That's a normal thing in the UK. Whereas in medicine, it's, hard to say I'm going to, train within the NHS setup. I'm going to then purchase or lease a building, and then I'm going to have patients come privately to come see me at my practice. Maybe in America, it's more set up like that, but in the UK, because of GP practices and hospitals, it doesn't lend itself to having startups as a medical doctor. So I think it's just in the structure of some of these professions.
Yeah. So it's a vertical that provides a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurship, essentially. So how long have you been a dentist? Since?
Yeah. So 2017. So 2013, I started dental school. I qualified in 2017. So it's been coming up to 9 years in August, September. I'd have been a dentist.
And so you practically always knew that you're going to set up your own practice. What was that pivotal point when, after 7 years roughly, that you decided this is a moment that you're going to set up your own practice? What was your thought process?
I knew that I would start a dental practice even when I was in Leicester. When I started doing my application for school, I knew that I was going to, because it was all about I want to be in healthcare, and I also
Yeah.
want to have a business. So really the thing that then made the step even closer was I had a plan, save up £100,000 and then start building this practice. But along that journey of saving up, number one, I realized I don't have to save up £100,000. Number two, I just got to the point where I'm like, I'm really competent and confident at what I do. I'm ready. I need to start looking at buildings. And that was maybe a 2022-ish that started. So yes, I'd say the real steps into like, okay, a building, a space, get solicitors, negotiate a lease, maybe that was happening 2023. Yeah.
So it wasn't like how do you call it, an idea that you had right after COVID, because obviously throughout COVID, it was a very tough time for clinics.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I already knew before COVID
Yeah.
that I wanted to start a practice. It was just, when am I in a position to start those irreversible steps?
Yeah. How was the mindset shift? So from obviously, even though that you always knew that you're gonna set up your own practice before you became a dentist, right? But surely when you going through that transition, there was a mindset shift. Anything that you experienced at that time, at that point?
So you mean when I first decided dentistry and practice?
So when you decide to set up your own practice at that moment, so
Mhm.
23, early 23, I
Okay.
would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. I'll probably even say 2022. I was asking questions, trying to guess
Mentally
who do I
preparing.
need, mentally
Yeah.
preparing. I'd probably say the mindset shift of getting things more into gear was when I felt really confident that I can make this work. So I'll give you a bit of context. So I was working at a mixed practice, which means that it provides NHS services and also private services. And I was doing both, but my diary was becoming more private in that a lot of patients that I was building a rapport with and I was providing options, they were going for a lot more private treatments. So that meant that I was doing a lot more private work and less of the NHS contract. And it got to the point where I extended my working days. I worked Saturdays. I was working 6 days a week. And I just made the decision, like, you know what? Let me go fully private. So I spoke with the practice owner and he said, instead of you going fully private and remaining in that treatment room, that surgery, I'm going to make another practice on the same road, but it's a squat practice from scratch. So I was like, yeah, that still works for me. And that was great because I got to have firsthand experience. I was the only dentist in that practice. There was zero patients from the get-go. So I had to, with the team that was then also with me at that practice, I had to really grow that practice from the ground up. And that also just gave me a stamp to say, okay, I've seen it. I'm the only dentist and we've been fine. We've been getting new membership patients. We've been thriving. So if I was to do this myself, I feel ready.
So it's almost like a stepping stone. So it's almost like a prep stage before having your very own practice.
Yeah. It wasn't premeditated. What was premeditated was, okay, I now need to go fully private. But the owner saying, I'll build another clinic, same road. That just was I guess a blessing that came at the right time.
That is awesome. Not a lot of clinic owners had that experience, had that opportunity, right, at that time. So what was the most surprising thing that you experienced when you transitioned from, of course, you had a kind of a transitional phase of working alone as a sole dentist in a practice that's almost set up for yourself, right? And then later on, you found your own location, set up your own brand, set up your own practice, which is Lancashire Smile. What
Yeah.
was the most surprising thing that you experienced transitioning into the new role as in a clinic owner by yourself, for yourself?
Yes, I'd have to clarify that. Do you mean during the build process or do you mean when I actually started operating? Because that's like two different
Say more, say
experiences.
more, say both, please.
Yeah, so it's the toughest thing that I've ever done, building the practice. You're relying on builders, you're relying on other people, tradespeople, the architect who I worked with, you're relying on the budget that you set actually helping you get over the line. You're relying on CQC inspectors to come and give you the green light to actually start seeing patients. And you've got to build a team to come work at a practice that doesn't exist yet. So at what point do you do interviews? At what point do you give them a contract and say, okay, you can leave your other job, give your notice, come? Because as soon as they do that, they're expecting to start getting paid when they start working for you. You can't start seeing patients and generating an income until the builders finish their bit and until CQC come and say, yes, you're okay to start seeing patients. So I collected keys for the building space in February. The builders told me that by June, the building will be done. We got to June and the building wasn't done. And the building, was probably done. Actually, yeah, it was done in September, the week that we were having the staff members actually come in for their induction week. So, you can't plan for that. I had negotiated a 6-month rent-free period so that we could build. And I was thinking, they take 3 months to build. I've got 3 months rent-free. We're just building ourselves up, getting income in, sorting out staff wages. Okay. I know that things don't go perfectly to plan. So even if it's 4 or 5 months, I've got a 6-month margin. So surely this is going to be straightforward. But the build is only finished in September. So that ate up all the margin that I had, I gave them double the margin. Yeah, because they said 3 months and we took 6 months to actually get to a usable space. They weren't finished.
Yeah.
It was a big snag list, but it was a usable space.
That must be stressful.
And at the same time, CQC, we started the application maybe in April or May. Bearing in mind, they only came, I think it was the 2nd of September that CQC came. We started the application in April time, let's say March, April time. So again, if I had done that, any later, even though the building had been ready, we couldn't see patients because CQC wouldn't have been yet. So it's almost like, when you think about it, it's almost like an impossible, how does it even happen? Because you've got to make so many things connect. So I lost a lot of weight during that period of time. But yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was really rewarding seeing it all come together when the first patient started to step in and we were operating. Going back to your question, mindset had to be one of problems are going to come, but you just have to find a way to make it work. There's no turning back. The bank is expecting their repayments, whether you build or not. They're expecting their repayments. So you have to make this work. And we had our second daughter born in May. Practice started in September. So there was just a lot of pressure at the time. Once you've opened, that was a big milestone in itself. I was able to check the box of you set out to be in healthcare and to own a business, but you get new challenges. And one of the new challenges was actually understanding cash flow. You can teach the theory, you can tell people, expect this, this, and this, but it's only when you're in it and you realize, oh, okay, there's some loan repayments that you need to make. There's utility bills that you need to be making. You've got to pay staff, and not just pay staff, but their pension, their NI contributions, and all these numbers, they add up. So even though, when you look at let's say you look at the income and the costs, even though, when you're looking at your accounting reports, things look great in terms of profit, sometimes they need to need to factor in the repayments to some of the loans that you took out. And then, think maybe it's not a wise idea for me to take an income from this business if I want to be able to reinvest into this business and grow it. So for a good 6 months, I didn't take any income from the business. And even now, I take about £1,000 a month from the business. So, you think about I was earning a lot more as a self-employed dentist working for somebody else, even though I'm generating much more as a dentist in my own practice. I actually take home very little. So getting my mind used to all of these things of now, okay, I've got to operate as a business owner, and I've got to be more intentional about how to make my practice profitable, more streamlined, systems introduced. I don't know if I'm answering your question now. I've been going on for quite some time there.
And some. And some. That's very interesting. I wonder, we could go so many directions with this, but I did wanted to ask, what was a major sort of difference that you could see now, standing on top of a different mountain, different top of the hill, where looking back at your experience as a clinician alone, as a freelance or working for another practice, as operating as a business owners, the sacrifice that you had to make in terms of sacrificing your personal income to build a separate entity outside of yourself, outside of your own personal bank account, that risk and a reward and the stress that you have to deal with, I cannot imagine. One question that I had was, now you've operated your own practice for more than close to 2 years now. If there's one thing that you would have done differently, of course, like early on, as you mentioned, it seems to be that there was no playbook at the beginning when you set up your own clinic. I'm sure there are loads of support and help and guides and YouTube videos out there, which you can talk a bit more about later about your own podcast. What was the one thing that you wish you have done differently? Of course, hiring a different contractor, sorting out the building on time, that's probably a good one. Is there any other thing that you can think of that, let's say a new up and coming dentist deciding to set up on his or her own practice, what would be the one thing that you would?
I would say on that point on construction. So as a professional, as a dentist, somebody pays you for a service and you fulfill on that service. You go through the due diligence, consent process, risks, you go through all of that. And that's that. When I was, being told by the builders, 3 months, we'll get this done for you, and we agree on a payment schedule every 2 weeks, £20,000, whatever, I was naive in that if I'm holding my part of the bargain of providing you with the funds at your specified, time schedules, that you're doing everything on your part to fulfill what we've agreed. And then, if things are going to be delaying or whatever, you will just let me know that actually we're going to need a month extra. But I never got any of that. And it's only as I was getting to that 3-month mark and we're seeing that we're nowhere near finishing, that I was now actually a lot more present on the building site, pressing them on, getting different aspects of the building works finished. I would say, one piece of advice is sure that you're actually having, let's say, weekly or 2-weekly catch-ups where it's like, okay, have you completed what you said you'd complete in 2 weeks? Okay, I'll make the payment for that 2 weeks at this point. So I'll be a lot more hands-on and less hands-off in that respect. Whereas, I just thought all professionals, we agree something, we set a schedule. So
always good intention.
But I was just too naive at that point. So that's one big thing I changed.
So more about setting up the right milestones and then almost not micro, but almost project manage the entire build. So that
I'd say being more of a project manager, but the milestones were there because I'd worked with the architect as well, and we'd agreed with the builders milestones for every 2 weeks, every month. But it's a different thing actually saying, okay, we'll only pay you as you complete each of these milestones.
Yeah, very interesting. But one question that I had was that obviously, clearly you are a business owner now. And as you mentioned that you don't even take too much income from the practice yourself in order to build this as a business. Clearly you are very business and growth oriented or growth driven. So from that perspective, and you obviously, as a business, the key objective is profit, right? Revenue or profit, whichever way you want to look at it. what would you say will be the single critical thing on the operational level that you and other peers or similar practice owner like yourself focusing on growth that would agree on as a practice owner? Like, what would be the one critical thing that is common sense that all growth minded or growth driven practice owners would agree on?
Okay. I would say, just the basics of business and cash flow. So you need more money in the month than money that goes out. And that just means that you can deal with your expenses and your costs. You pay your staff, you keep staff. And then from that, it'll be, what's your plan for now having a gap really forming between money that comes in and money that goes out? Because that allows you now to start paying staff even more and holding on to great talent. Because I think, your business will only grow as much as your workforce or your team will allow it to grow. And then it's finding ways to bring in a lot more revenue into the practice. And that'll include things like systems that you've got in place. So that even as you're getting new patients in, how are you retaining those patients? How have you got recurring revenue? And how are you increasing the lifetime value of each of those patients? But yes, the basics of, you've got to have more coming in than is going out. And then how do you get even more coming in and even less going out?
Yeah, fundamentals.
Yes.
And what would be the one mistake that you see clinic owners make that almost like contradictory to that thing that they should be doing?
Yeah.
Is
So
there
I
any?
would take myself as an example in that even though I'm growth minded, I was almost looking to grow too quickly at the detriment of stabilizing cash flow and getting that really healthy. With me, I say with me, my wife is risk averse. I will take risk. So for
Good
me,
balance.
all the money that was coming in and remaining, I was pumping it out in investing in new equipment, having more staff. And the biggest thing was we kitted out the second treatment room 3 months into operating as a practice. So the first 3 months, we had one treatment room. And then from month 3 onwards, we started kitting out the second treatment room, which is a big expense. And I did that because month 1, month 2, month 3 were great. we were seeing, income going up and up. And I'm like, yeah, if this carries on, let's prepare for this growth and get a second treatment room, a bigger capacity. But really what I needed to do was to make sure that we maximized the occupancy of the first treatment room. We've got a big waiting list building up. Okay, build
No
the
white
second
space.
treatment room, and then you go into that in a stronger position. Because when you open the second treatment room, you then have to disperse all the activity between 2 rooms. So you have a lot more white space that will open up between the 2 rooms. So yes, that's something that I was learning as I grew as a business owner. So now treatment room 3, it's been what, a year and a half. We haven't opened treatment room 3 for treatments. It's just being used for consultations. So again, that was a learning from opening treatment room 2. Trying to grow too quickly and not growing and not building out capacity at the right time.
Would you say that your model or framework was to making sure that there is no white space, eliminate white space, squeeze out as much efficiency as possible within the capacity that you offer, or in another word, making sure that retention is strong, there's no leaky bucket, making sure that the bucket is full, and then move on to the next bucket.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Do you see that many clinic owners make that mistake? As in growing too quickly, trying to open up the second, the third, the fourth, so on buckets before they actually fix the leaky problems, or they have a lot of white
Yeah.
space with one and then move on to the next.
So I can't really comment on that because now I'm on the other side. As I see new practices opening up and making their moves, I can probably then speak on that. But right now, because I'm 18 months into this, I wasn't really thinking like that before. So I can't really comment on that. But I'd probably say it's a challenge that a lot of new clinic owners will have. When do I grow? When do I increase capacity? And it's getting that timing right. Because, when you increase capacity, you need more staff, you've got more expenses, you're
More
having clinicians
liability.
come on board. Clinicians want to step into a full book. So, there's all these different things to think about. So I can't say I see practitioners making the same mistake, because I haven't had the insight to see what their practices are like as they open them up. But I'm sure I'll be keeping an eye on that as I talk with other clinic owners that I'm meeting.
Very soon. That's a good segue, because you're one of the clinic owners that I've seen posting very regularly and consistently
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, which is a relatively new channel for healthcare providers. Because before I got into healthcare, I thought that your customers are consumers, essentially,
Yeah.
and consumers are in Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So the D2C platform are generally the right platform for you to distribute content, building brands,
Yeah.
etc. But you
Yes.
built quite an interesting brand, personal brand, with building public tactics and strategy on LinkedIn. Walk me through your thought process. What was the reason that got you into LinkedIn and built quite a bit of success as someone that
Yeah.
came from B2B side? So can you
Yes.
share a bit more about that?
Yes. Good question. So, as a self-employed dentist, it's important to build your brand. When I say brand, I mean reputation. And we all agree that it's important to build your reputation as a clinician, so that you get patients that come and trust you and uptake treatment with you. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, great for that. And I was doing that as a self-employed dentist. As a business owner, there's a bit of a shift now, or a big shift, in that I want to connect with my local community, other businesses, and other key opinion leaders, organizations in my area. Those relationships, they happen more naturally on LinkedIn. I mentor dentists who want to improve and teeth straightening using clear aligners. That starts to happen through a platform like LinkedIn, in terms of them seeing what I do and then being able to message me about that. So, yes, LinkedIn, I'm not using LinkedIn to bring in more patients directly like that. That's not the intent for LinkedIn with me. I want to meet with leaders within my community. I want to be able to connect with dentists who are wanting to level up with clear aligners and teeth straightening. And I'm also wanting to improve in terms of collaborations with different companies in the dental world. So I've been the likes of Sensodyne, filming for their ads. Those sort of relationships happen on LinkedIn. I've been asked to speak for different companies within the dental industry. Those relationships come through LinkedIn. So December, I decided that, I don't want to just be lighthearted about this. I want to take this really seriously. So I was actually on holiday, and on holiday, or when I'm swimming, I get loads of good ideas. So one of the ideas, when I was reading a book by a guy called Daniel Priestley, I think he'd made the book Key Person of Influence. And so I wanted to take LinkedIn more seriously. So I decided that I was going to post on LinkedIn 5 times a week. So Monday to Friday, indefinitely. That was what I decided in December during my holiday. And from January, that's just been the plan. I'd have to look back from January to see if I've kept to that. But yeah, Monday to Friday, I should be releasing a post on LinkedIn. And that's where the quality of my post has actually gotten better. And I'm able to freely share as I've refined how I post on LinkedIn. And that's something how we then connected when you messaged as well.
Yeah, exactly. How did you find the time as a clinic owner, as a business owner, as a clinician? That must
Yeah.
be difficult, to say the least. How did you find the time, or just finding efficiency and tools and system to hack?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I get asked this quite a lot. And I always felt like I was good with my time management when I was a student at university. And then I got married, and I realized I wasn't that good with my time management. And then I had children, and then I realized I wasn't anywhere near good enough with my time management. So what I've realized over the years is I now am productive with the time I set out to be productive. So someone might say, let's say uni students, I spent an all-nighter revising for my exams. you weren't productive for all those 8, 9 hours. You were, drinking your energy drink, and you weren't really taking in the information. You weren't making the most of each minute. So I've learned to make the most of each minute when I'm setting myself to a task. Choose to wake up at 5 in the morning so that I've got a few hours to do my routine before I then go into work, do nursery drop off, go into my clinic, into my practice. I've got longer days and I'm more intentional with what I'm doing with that time. I also use apps. So like Asana is an app that I use with my team, which keeps us accountable. Because a lot of business owners, you'd have ideas, you'll say things to your team on WhatsApp or emails or whatever. But 4 weeks later, has anything actually been done on what you agreed or what you spoke about? So I use an app like Asana where we say, okay, we've had our meeting, me and my practice manager. These are the action points that we want to get done. Okay, we're putting those down to say there's a due date. And when we have our next meeting in 4 weeks, we're going to look back and see, have we done what we aimed to achieve? Have we completed our tasks? So it's a combination of me being ruthless with my time and using tools to keep my team accountable on what we agree. And I'm sure 12 months later, I'll be even more ruthless with my organization and how I maintain my time. But yeah, that's how I managed to do what I do.
Funny that every single person went through that journey, had that realization through first getting married and secondly having children. Once my friend just told me last week, once you have children, you realize that how unproductive you were before having children. Very interesting. And what I learned from that was being, number one, really project manage the objectives. Number two, being really intentional with what you do, and then also setting up accountability, right? Strictly being accountable with that outcome and the intent.
We say a lot,
out of time.
and we say a lot of things, but we don't actually mean it because we don't keep ourselves up to it. And we waste a lot more time than we think.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that we're running out of time. I just have 2 final questions. What questions? Lost my train of thought. Yeah. So as we discussed, you're very active on LinkedIn. What is the end game, or what is the objective that you're trying to build? I understand that you're saying building your community, building bigger network, strengthening your network. Are you looking to build a multi-site brand under your name, Lancashire Smile, building it into multiple brands, at the same time building yourself as the, how do you call it, the mentor, as you're already mentoring other dentists setting up their own practice? What is the objective?
So no, mentoring within clear aligners and teeth straightening. I'm not mentoring
the tactical
practices.
Got it.
I would say, the reason why I chose Lancashire Smiles as a name is because we want to have different practices within the region of Lancashire. So right now, we've got Lancashire Smiles in Kirkham. We're going to have Lancashire Smiles maybe in Blackburn, maybe Lancashire Smiles in Lancaster, maybe Lancashire Smiles in Burnley or Accrington. So, we are going to have different sites. And in terms of the end goal, something I heard from, I think it was Alex Amosi, was you should always build with the intention to sell. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to sell at the end, but it means that you're doing all that you can to make your business profitable and appealing to a buyer. So if you do sell, great. You've made it appealing and you're going to sell for as much as you can. If you don't sell, still good. You've made a really profitable business that will serve you for the long term, you and your family. So my end goal is really to build a mini corporate of practices, and then just pass that on to my children and the future generations. But who knows, might decide to sell if, it seems right, but I'm building it with the aim of passing it on to different generations.
It's really just wealth creation or option creation, right? So it's really just creating more options in terms of opportunities, etc.
Yes.
Yeah. Lastly, last question. You briefly mentioned about your new podcast that you are currently in the work. Do share.
Yes. So there's the Dental Launchpad podcast, which I'm currently in the process of filming. The weekend just gone. We filmed the first episode. So This podcast is season 1 is going to have a lot of companies and guests who helped me start Lancashire Smiles. And really, it's going to become like a blueprint. So I struggled to find one place with the information I needed to start Lancashire Smiles in Kirkham. So season 1 is going to have episodes which someone like me at that point could have watched and been like, okay, I've got a blueprint for what I can do to start my own practice. And I don't have to be looking at blogs, going onto Facebook groups, going onto YouTube and trying to piece it together, YouTube videos from America or other parts of the world. So it's going to have all of that so that somebody who's aspiring to be a practice owner can watch season 1 and get that. Season 2 and beyond, we'll just be building on that, getting other interesting guests who help you scale a practice from the ground up. So that's going to be launching the Dental Launchpad podcast very soon. Thank you.
That's really awesome. Yeah, folks, do check it out. When's the launch day?
Launch day, it's not revealed yet. We don't know yet, but
Right.
I'm looking to start launching episodes from definitely May 2026.
Definitely watch this space. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, and really great to speak to you. Hopefully we speak very soon again, and definitely come to the office when you're in London next, and we can
Yes.
record an in-person podcast in our studio. Really great to have you sharing the insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed being here with you, Sean.